Boy, you could really tell that the masses of black people, whether educated or not, really don't know what's going on in the planet. Or they do know what's going on around the planet, but they're purposely being disingenuous so that their followers and subscribers can adopt their worldview. And today we're specifically talking about Lexus Exodus, right? This might be the most egregious example of just straight neo-Nazi KKK divester I've seen on YouTube. And we're just going to go through some numbers. Y'all know Mr. Z likes to bring up numbers to kind of put into context what she's asking for, what she's advocating for, which again is divesting in context of the 21st century America, right? First, let's just say social norms have been obliterated in America. And it's been so more for black people because our socioeconomic positioning. But many people don't know what's going on outside of their door, outside of the black community, because they don't really have these deeper, larger social, political, and economic conversations with non-black people. And when they do, they kind of goad those people to say things that they already buy into. And I'm going to go through what I mean by that a little later on. Once again, and excuse my background, I am using my phone for recording, so obviously you'll hear some phone-related sounds as I record this. So let's go through some things. Once again, social norms have been obliterated. No one is obligated to anyone. I bring this up specifically because let's just say like it's her real name, Miss Exodus talked about the Goldman Sachs money that's supposedly coming through for black women specifically, and that was something that black men should be doing. No, ma'am. No man is obligated to women anymore. I don't know if you understood what second wave feminism was really about. And I'm not railing against feminists or feminism at this very point. I'm just saying, like, people subscribe to or advocate for certain movements and they don't ever consider the negatives that come from that, right? So let's use an extreme example. Slavery, right? You wanted to be free, as you should, but what came with that? Guess what? No more shelter, no more free food, even though that food should have really have been considered food. No more clothing, even though you were really given rags, not clothes. But that's what came with being free. What comes with equality between men and women is that much of your ideas of gender norms get obliterated. Now, you see this amongst black men, but many of you don't know white men. Yes, Lexus Exodus followers and subscribers, let's be honest, many of you do not know white men or non-black men, so you do not know that they pretty much subscribe to the same thing you're claiming black men subscribe to, which is no longer subscribing to gender norms, right? This is what came with it. If you want equality, you have to take all of what comes with equality, right? Okay, let's go through some other things. I really got to do this because I really know that you guys don't know shit. Intraracial Black Rage and Fear is what I'm going to title this. 75% of mothers work, according to the census. So this idea that these non-black women are just living it up and they're living in the lap of luxury, no, actually, that's factually inaccurate. And the median income for women in America is something like $25,000 a year, while the median income for men in America is something like $38,000 a year. I don't know where y'all are getting this idea of these non-black people, primarily white people, just living in the lap of luxury. This speaks to your ideas of womanhood, right? And the myth of white womanhood that many women of color subscribe to. This is not necessarily exclusive to black women. Y'all really think these white women are living way better than they're actually living. It costs $233,000 to raise a child from 0 to 18. And that's according to the Department of Agriculture. Many of you do not know that. So you're looking at your baby daddy like he's supposed to be a meal ticket, but really not, right? And this kind of speaks to the crunch of just living in America and living in the West, but living in America specifically, and how many of us are choosing not to have children, quite frankly, because we can't afford it. Now, in the black community, we tend to shirk this off on black men and just make it seem like it's a character flaw in black men, and that's why so much of the black community is in disarray, instead of making it seem like what it really is, which is a socioeconomic issue, right? I would like to direct y'all to the article that said economically unattractive men are leading to a downturn in marriage. That article came out a couple years ago, and it was primarily talking about white men. Now, when these things were happening to the black community and to black men 3 and 4 and 5 decades ago, we were making it seem like it was a character flaw in black men, and that black men were just horrible husbands for those that did get married, horrible fathers, and just horrible men in general. Now because it's happening to white men and non-black men, now we want to have the conversation about social and economic pressures taking away what we think the role of a man should be. Okay, the population decline. Right now, you need 2.1 children per woman to maintain a population in any given nation. Across the developed world, and especially the Western world, people are seeing less than 2 children in their country. So 1.9 child per woman, 1.8 child per woman, all the way down to South Korea, which has literally 1 child per woman, which is not going to maintain their population, and thus their economy is slated to start to decline. You see this or stagnate at best, decline at worst, and you see this across, once again, the developed world. You see this in South Korea, Japan. You see this in America with the child birth situation. You see this across Western Europe. But many of you in the black community don't know that, so you shirk that off on black men again. Namely, people like Lexus Exodus, who think you can divest your way out of the situation. You're literally probably going to go from a regular ass black dude to a regular ass white dude. And the only difference will be you might respect him more or cherish him more because he's a white dude, but his social and economic positioning will be akin to that of a black man. Let's continue. Marriage is at a 150-year low across America. That's not just black people, you guys. That's 150-year low across America because, quite frankly, poor, working class, and lower middle class people, which is the masses of people in America, just can't afford what it means to be a husband anymore. Thus, many women are being left not being a wife. And for those that want a traditional marriage and have a child in marriage, that's also hurting your prospects of that. See, these are larger social, political, and economic issues, but we don't want to address it as that. We just want to talk about men and their character flaws. Let's keep on going. 51 to 54% of adult black men do not have children. Close to 30% of black men, I think it's like 28% of black men, are married. So if we add those two numbers up, something like, 78 to 80% of black men are not these men that you are railing against, right? So it's not even close to half, but yet we don't speak like that in the black community, right? We speak like fully 90% of black men are these monsters just going around knocking black women's heads off, being extreme colorists, because many of you, that's what you care about and the only thing you care about. And black men are just jump, hop, skipping over black women to end up with these non-black women. All these narratives that are literally just a Google search away. You are literally 20 seconds away from dispelling this myth of this black male monster that a great number of black women have. Okay, the median income, right? So the median income in America right now is $31,000. And I brought up income earlier, but just to kind of put into context what people are living, right? $31,000 is the median income. Once again, many of you didn't know that, nor did you care to know. You really think the average American is making what, like $70,000 a year? No, not even close. Yeah, so according to the American Enterprise Institute, 26% of poor Americans are married, 39% of middle class, and 56% of upper middle class and above. Also important when we think about marriage and why so many young people primarily are not getting married. When we say young people, we really mean 40 and under. So pretty much millennials. You know what? I'll even give a nod to younger Xers. So let's start it at 45. 45 and younger are not getting married. Because quite frankly, once again, it costs too much, especially on the side of the man, to maintain that notion of what it costs to be a husband. And many of us do not know this, nor do we care to know. And remember, women file for the majority of divorces in America, and much of the time it's something financially related, right? Economic related. So think about it for you ladies that are still listening. Think about it in a man's point of view. Let's say I'm too poor to get married. If I do get married, eventually she's going to leave me because I don't have money. And we probably would have had a child or two. So whatever little bit of crumbs I do make, she's going to take most of that in child support and, God forbid, alimony, right? Many of you are not thinking about it in that way. So you think, air quotes, climbing uphill to non-black men, primarily white men, is going to solve this. But once again, white people primarily are waiting for that $68 trillion wealth transfer that's supposed to be coming from their boomer parents. So these white men don't really got it like that either. But once again, y'all don't know that, nor do y'all care to know. Let's continue. Women across the board out-educate their men. Lexus Exodus brought this up earlier, how black women out-educate black men. That's across the board, ma'am. That's not exclusive to black women. That's white women, that's Asian women, that's Latina women. And that's primarily Latina women, white women, black women. Out educating their men. Once again, y'all are playing musical chairs when it comes to this education thing, because if we continue to get 54%, 55%, maybe even close to 60% of college educated people being women, and women tend to practice hypergamy and date and marry up educationally also, eventually y'all are going to run into the brick wall that is the math just doesn't add up, right? The math just doesn't add up. How's this supposed to work unless y'all want to practice polygamy and be 2, 3, 4, 5 deep on one dude, you know, and that's up to you ladies. Yes, dating is a big gamble. A lot of people are walking around here with broken hearts. You're hurt because you got your heart broken, you got played, or you got used in the dating scene within the black community, right? And so you, once again, shirk this off to black men just being black men. Black men are monsters. This is what they do, especially if you're a dark-skinned black woman. You really think that black men do this to dark-skinned black women. And that's just not the case. Men and women hurt each other emotionally, mentally, right? This is part of the dating scene. This is actually part of human nature, because people are getting their heart broken in marriages also. And this is not, once again, not only is this not exclusive to black men, this is not exclusive to men. It's just that now with social media, we have a grievance industry and a rage industry and an anger and rage porn industry where people can get into their little silos, their little ciphers, and just regurgitate hurt boy or hurt girl stories to each other and enrage each other even more. Lexus Exodus and other black women in this space do the same thing. They just spew out a bunch of rage-filled things to get their followers and subscribers to be even more angry and rageful towards black men and get them to divest and to swirl. And by the way, ladies, you're going to find the same thing outside of the black community. For those of you that do decide to swirl or divest, this is human beings. This is human nature, right? If we take for granted that no one is perfect, how do you think this is supposed to work? You think you're just going to hop, jump, skip over black men into the arms of non-black men, primarily white men, because that's y'all God, and then all of the heartbreak thing will be solved. All of the financial issues will be solved, right? This just doesn't make sense. The numbers just aren't in your favor, but many of you do not know that, right? Okay, let's bring up crime, because Miss Exodus brought up crime. Crime was on the decline for the past 30 years, pre-COVID. Now, obviously, it spiked since COVID because our entire notion of civility has been shredded, right? Not to mention, most of this stuff is like economic crimes. But how many of you even knew that from 2019 and before, that crime, including violent crime, was on the decline, including in your major black cities outside of a couple of them, right? That's why many of you racist and you divestors and swirlers like to bring up particular cities like Chicago, right? These are the cities that you can name, because even in major black cities, crime was on a decline. Let's bring up something else. The median house is $341,000. So the median house right now is going for $341,000. Why does this matter? It matters because that's one of the reasons why many of you are angry. You don't know what's going on the planet, right? You don't know what's going on in this country. And so you're just raging because you're getting the squeeze. There's an economic squeeze happening to Americans writ large. And black people, obviously, because we tend to be on a socioeconomic bottom, like y'all heard before, when America has the cold, black America has the flu. So y'all are really raging at each other for larger social, political, and economic issues, but you can't help to be mad at your fellow black person. And it tends to be across gender, right? Across the sexes. What else do we know? 328 million Americans, 157 million Americans work. And out of those 157 million Americans, half of them make $31,000 a year or less. I brought up the $31,000 a year or less, but I wanted to let you know how many Americans are pretty much making that or less, right? So that's let's round up that 157 to 60 so that we can make the math a little bit easier. So fully about 80 million Americans make somewhere around $31,000 or less, right? Ladies, many of those many of those Americans are men that are making that 31,000. You want to know why you're not getting married? Why men aren't proposing? Well, I would ask all of you that want to divest and swirl, go divest and swirl, and let's see how quick you are to get a ring on your finger. That's if you don't grade on a curve and marry a white man just because he's a white man, even though his social and economic positioning, outside of his skin color, of course, is the same as the black man you would have turned down and would have called dusty. Let's keep on going. 4% of black women are married outside the race. Yes, you heard right. See, many people quote that 12% number, but that 12% number is for married black women, right? So out of married black women, 12% are married outside of the race. But if you talk about all adult black women, only 4% are married to non-black men. 4%, y'all. So this swirler and divester talk, we're really basing this off of 4% of black women. And I know Hollywood has been doing this really great push over the past decade or so of kind of like ego stroking and placating black women with the idea that these non-black men want more from you than just sex, with all these TV shows and commercials and some of your favorite celebrities having relationships or being married to white men. But the numbers don't lie. Ever since Loving versus Virginia, white men have had legal access to black women. We're not even going to talk about when it was illegal and they were still coming through in the hood and doing what they were doing and leaving a lot of mixed babies out here. We don't even want to have that conversation, right? But ever since Loving versus Virginia, white men have had legal access to black women. And this is what, 50 years ago, give or take? Right? Maybe even more than 50 years ago, Loving versus Virginia, that was in the 60s, right? So we're talking about over 50 years legal access, and yet all that has mustered is 4% of interracial marriages between black women and non-black men. So we can imagine if we're doing black women and non-black men, it's probably what, 3%, 2% and some change of black women with white men specifically. The numbers just don't add up. Let's talk about Hollywood. So the portrayal of black women for decades, pretty much going to the beginning of film, has been very negative, right? Black men have made just the smallest inches into Hollywood and film when it comes to production and owning shit over the past 3, maybe 4 decades. But yet we put all the onus of negative portrayals of black women on black men, even though black men still really don't own or control anything in Hollywood. So a couple of rappers making videos, making music videos, and maybe calling black women bitches and hoes, and excuse my language. We base everything off of that over the past, 3 decades, give or take, a year or two? Not the century plus of black women being portrayed negatively by non-black men, primarily white men. Once again, white men get a discount because of white skin, and black men get the overall onus being put on them, right? So I'm coming to a close. I just want to ramble off these things just to put in context what women like Lexus Exodus are actually saying in context of the data and the history. I am not going to tell you not to divest if you want to divest. Actually, you should. Maybe it'll be better if you, as an anti-black man, black woman, and then your probably racist anti-black partner go off into the sunset in the suburbs and have your hateful ass children and just live over there, and please don't come back to the black community, because the last thing we need is a mixed black person spewing their anti-black stuff because they were raised by a racist ass father and an anti-black racist ass black mother. Jeez, right? So I just wanted to get that out there. Miss Lexus Exodus, you really don't know what you're talking about. And from my understanding, you have a master's degree, right? And you have a black son, and yet you're still speaking this way. You're still speaking this, and none of these things are factually accurate. They're not based on history or anything. Because if we start doing the numbers, then you start looking really, really foolish. But you don't care. And I would guess that your subscribers and your followers don't care either. These are just excuses for you to swirl and divest. And there's nothing wrong. You live in a free country. Go swirl and divest until your heart is content. But there is no need to beat up on black men on the way out the door and rage on the way out the door. This is very childish. It's like a person that subscribed to you, that you say something they don't like and they have to make sure to tell you, I'm unsubscribing before they unsubscribe, right? That's all this is. What this really is black people feeling the crunch of modernity and living in modern times and not knowing the answers. But one answer they do know: blame other black people, right? I have this quote that I say, black people have a tendency to blame other black people first and the most whenever something bad happens or whenever there's something they can't explain, right? And I'll end it right there. Y'all definitely let me know what y'all think. And ladies, for those of you that listen to this, let me know what y'all think. Especially for those of you that buy into divesting and swirling. How do the numbers work for you? That's the important part that I really want to know. If what I say is true, how will the numbers work for you even when you go out of the black community, right? And marry and date outside of the black community. We also have a lot of data that says out of all of you that date outside the black community, less than a quarter of you actually get married outside the black community. So in other words, let's call it what it is. You're having sex with non-black men and then either staying single for the rest of your life, or only a quarter of you end up marrying these non-black men. So you were just handing out free black vagina for the 1 out of 4 chance that you end up with a non-black man. I don't know how y'all think about that, but those numbers don't look exactly great to me. And I'll end it right there. Once again, let me know what y'all think.